Alright, so to understand this function, there's three main concepts you should understand. Is the print, return, and variable setting. So print and return are very similar in practically they're this very same thing. Use cases as well as functionality. With return, return is always defined where you have the statement return or the keyword. Return is the keyword followed by a value. Now, print is always the statement print and within brackets a value. Now we can see the difference here is that return is a keyword with value. Print is a function name followed by an input. And this is the difference. Print is a method or function. Return is a built-in behavior in Python. So print utilizes something called the console. And now all that the console is a kind of a dashboard where communication happens. So print is for communication. In that, in the console, every what you call an IDE or a programming website, whatever you call it, has a console. Now in the console, the print function always executes or returns, or we'll say writes. It writes the value. And now when is this useful? Well, if you have a function, let's say dishwashing, we'll use the dishwasher. So you have a dishwasher and it takes an input, let's say the dishes and the amount of cleaner you give it. Now with these inputs, these actual things, in the end, it gives you, the clean plates. And of course we know that spaces should be separate by underscores if it's a variable. Now in between, we could have, you'd say checkpoints. This will be checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, and we'll say, checkpoint 3. So checkpoint 1, you could say, now if these checkpoints, you could kind of log or print the status of the dishwasher. So you could say here at checkpoint 1, print, we'll say in brackets, done warming, we'll say. So, the cycle begins by warming up the plates and the temperature so that the water can do its job. Then checkpoint 2, you can say print, we'll say done, you can say print, we'll say done watering, I guess you could say. It's soaked, or we'll say done soaking. It's soaked in water. Then the final stage could be print, done rinsing. So at each of these stages, of course, in between, there'll be kind of function calls. So here, it would do the cleaning, the soaking, and then the rinsing, and then it'll give you back the clean dishes. But in between would be your behavior. These 3 checkpoints is where you print, or you actually allow the user to see what's going on. So the difference between print and return, print actually uses what's called the console to communicate with the programmer, to tell them the status of the program or actually behave with it. So in the beginning stages of programming, you might use kind of input or these ways to communicate with the user to say, hello, what's your name? And then based on what they give you, they can give you some input and base your program on that. Now, in high level, these would be done in a different way through an interface or like a website. But low level, you use print and input. So print is meant to be the kind of window between the user and the program, and it communicates between the two. Return is specific in that it holds and then gives the value of what it calculates to something else. And now a variable setting always works as following. So we always have a variable name, we'll say var name, and then equals, and then some value. Now the versatility comes in that this value can be a lot of different things. So types of values, the same way we have, in the real world, numbers, letters, we have kind of characters, we have punctuation. In Python, there are types of variables that are made in place, or types of things you can store. Types of data, we'll say, which are called data types. And there are ints, or integers, whole numbers. There's also floats, which are decimal numbers. There's also booleans, which is a new concept unique to programming, which are just true or false. Now booleans are helpful for maintaining kind of one or two states of something. So booleans are always either true or false. That's how they're defined. We also have strings. Strings, and also finally lists. And now a list is a collection of data types. Now there's different types of lists, but we'll go over that after, because each of them have their own type of nuances. Now knowing this, we can go to the program. So here, again, we have a function called apple that takes in an input banana. Then we create a new variable called cherry, and this takes in the value and stores the value of this operation. Then we want to return cherry. Remember that. We return the value that this gives because it's stored in cherry and we want to return it. So return collects the value of cherry and gives it back to whoever asked to take this value or give you the value. Orange here prints cherry. So the difference is here we have the same kind of a same structure. So we have a print. Here we just have print and some text. Here is when we're communicating with the programmer. So here we're saying running function apple. Now we know as a programmer this is what's happening in the background. Otherwise we wouldn't know what's going on. Then we see here that we make a new variable called kiwi. And now we know that with every variable, there has to come right after a value. Our value here doesn't always have to be its set thing. It doesn't have to be like 35 or like a string. It can be a function that gives back a value. So here we have apple that returns the value for cherry. So again, because return collects and gives back the value, here, because we called, or in technical terms, we invoked apple, all that means is we actually used the function and we gave it input 5. It will give back cherry. And now here again, we have another thing, another status update. So printing the value. Then we print the value for kiwi. So whatever value this function gave us is now stored into kiwi because of the return statement, because it returned or gave back the value, the calculated value to kiwi, and then we print kiwi. This is where it gets different. So here we have the same statement, running function, we call the function, printing the value, and we print the value. Now this function, if you'd like to recreate it, you can, but this works differently. So all that we're saying is that once you're done this evaluation, I want you to communicate to the programmer the value you got for cherry. There's no return. So wherever line or whatever line that function was called, the value does not return to line because nothing is given back. Nothing is collected or given back to the original call statement. So here what happens is Python gives this variable a unique value, and it's called none. And this is unique to Python. Other programming languages have different ways to handle this, but it only does this because a variable without a value is useless, and thus a programmer would not define it unless it was needed. So to prevent any errors in the future, Python gives it a placeholder value called none, which is similar to null, and all that means is it's empty. Any variable with a none as its value is empty, but it's an empty so that you don't cause errors, because a variable cannot be empty unless it's called on, and different things are done. Now here what happens is, when you print line, you print the actual value, so the value stored in line. But since we only have stored none, what we will print here is not this value here, using banana, it's actually none, because line here never stored any number from here, because this function here never gave back anything to line. Now here, this is just another example, but the same way you can set a variable to a value, you can again send it to any value. So you can do some changes to a value before it's actually stored. Here we're saying that take the value apple gives you and then multiply by 3 and then store it in Mango. So again, it leaves left from left to right. So do 3 times the value from apple. Now here, the same thing happens, except it's doing 3 times. And orange, of course, it does not return anything. It prints the status update. So it takes on the value none. Now 3 times none is just none. 3 times an empty variable, 3 times nothing is also nothing. But since there is really no nothing in programming,